What is going on, everybody? Travis Fowler Harkrider, little RVD nod there, is back once again this week with another edition of Tights and Turnbuckles, formerly known as the Four Corner Podcast, if you are following us on our Facebook page. So, if you're tuning in and listening right now and haven't already, please hit that subscribe button here on YouTube, as it really does help the channel out more than what you know. And if you're watching and listening, that means it's time for one thing and one thing only, my favorite thing to do. Let's talk pro wrestling, because this week, in-ring wise, it was a fun and exciting ride for WWE as they head towards Bash in Berlin, and AEW is now just a mere 8 days away from All In at Wembley Stadium. And of course, there was huge news about the All In show for next year announced this week, which we'll get into a little bit later in the show. But yeah, let's do a little quick recap of the in-ring activity we saw. Last night, SmackDown, we saw Roman Reigns come back, and he was met with the Samoan werewolf, Jacob Fatu, who stopped Reigns from walking out with the signification of the tribal chief. I know I'm about to mispronounce this, so please forgive me. The Ulafala, I believe is how it's pronounced. I don't know, something along those lines. Either way, the necklace to represent the tribal chief status. Roman had it for a split second after he laid waste to Tama Tonga and to Solo Sikoa, but Fatu, who Meltzer said was going to be kept away from Reigns for quite a while, showed up and kicked Reigns right in the face and put a beat down on the OTC. And at the end of the night, it was Solo that still walked out as the self-proclaimed tribal chief. Also on SmackDown, we saw the Street Profits become the number one contenders in an excellent tag team bout with DIY. Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes are on their way to Bash in Berlin, and I don't know about y'all, but I think there might be something more coming from this Kevin Owens feud. We'll talk about that along with Cody's overall title reign and booking a little bit later. Man, it's just been amazing watching WWE because everything just feels much more clean. And what I mean by that is there's not a whole lot that gets you confused. There's not really a whole lot that you are like scratching your head wondering, are they going to pay this off? Where's this going? Things like that. Everything has just been smooth sailing with the Triple H reign, and I honestly love every single second of it. Now, that doesn't mean I like everything that goes on during his booking, but for the most part, he knocks it out of the park. Now, if you are like Bully Ray, who I honestly can't disagree too much with his reasoning here, for whatever reason, the Final Testament is one of those that I have been in full support of, but just for whatever reason, it has not clicked yet with Cross along with his group. I don't know why. Maybe this New Day feud is going to go somewhere here pretty quick where it'll maybe get a little bit more interesting, but I have to kind of agree with Bully Ray on this one, is that it kind of seems like the Final Testament and Cross are dead in the water, but maybe there's still some hope there. Only time will tell. Over on that Raw side, we'll continue to talk. Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest have a date with Dominic and Liv at Bash in Berlin. We saw Priest get his hands on Dominic on Monday for a little bit. Rhea almost was able to do more damage to Liv Morgan, but Liv slipping away right there. Gunter and Randy Orton continuing their build towards their world title match. And, I mean, Raw's just been one of those where I can sit down, watch a 3-hour Raw, and I don't feel slightly bored. I know that sounds weird, but everything matters, which is one of those things that I was talking about why the Attitude Era at one point was so successful. Sure, you had all of the characters, you had all of the storylines, things like that, but the main focus was that everybody had a character. Everybody had a purpose. Everybody was meant for something, and there was something entertaining on the show for everybody. And I feel like that's what both Raw and SmackDown have become. Whether you're digging the Drew McIntyre Punk blood feud, which has been amazing, and I saw someone say, they're doing this over a bracelet. Well, not necessarily. That's just a fragment and a little physical representation now for what this feud is representing. But now we think we're going to get the strap match, which from what I've read online, is the route that they're going to go for Bash in Berlin. All that will hopefully lead to the final match, the culmination of what will be this trilogy at Hell, or well, I say at Hell in the Cell because I believe that's the stipulation, but at Bad Blood. And I do believe you'll see Punk and McIntyre in that. I still think if they're going to do a second, Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley can fill that spot. So another Women's Hell in the Cell would actually be really fun. If you're a fan of the creepy, goofy character type of gimmick, I like more of the creepy, dark stuff. That's why the Wyatt Six has been on fire for me. If you enjoy that, they've been doing great work over there. SmackDown's been no different. NXT even has had some great things happening. The TNA crossover has been wonderful. I was sad when we saw the breakup of the Rascals, but I think it is going to lead somewhere. Even Wesley's like, hey, I know this is going to cause a match between me and Zach down the road, so that's been fun storytelling. NXT in general, I don't think people give enough credit towards as being a great show overall because of it being mostly developmental talent, but these guys are coming into their own. They're finding their characters. They're getting used to wrestling in front of live crowds. They're getting used to camera work with WWE, and it's all paying off because NXT has just been amazing. And they do have a lot of great characters there too. Very much similar to the main roster, almost anybody you see on that show has some form of a gimmick. The most important characters of the show all have their rhyme, reason, and place, and it's a fun show to watch. AEW has been doing much better with their stories. I mean, I know for the most part there's probably only 3 or 4 that people are keeping track of. I know for me personally, I think the 2 biggest stories right now, the number 1 of my favorite right now has been Mariah May and Toni Storm. I've been enjoying the crap out of that, and I think it's going to continue to pay off. And when we get to Wembley next Sunday, Storm and May, it's going to be a great match. I really have no doubt in that whatsoever. The other feud, if you want to call it that, that's really gained my interest, I very much am looking forward to seeing what Swerve and Danielson pull out. Is this going to be Danielson's last match ever? We only will find out a week from tomorrow. I'm filming this on Saturday, so a week from tomorrow, 8 days from today, it will be Danielson versus Swerve in what could be Bryan Danielson's last match. Will he retire or will he walk out world's champion? I'm not a big fan of the Jericho TV learning tree thing. It's just not really been my bag. The Britt Baker, Mercedes Moné stuff has been decent, but again, just something about it's not quite hitting with me. I think it's going to be a good match between Baker and Moné. At least that's my hope. I don't get the logic of booking Hikaru Shida against Mercedes Moné in a TBS title match when she just lost a match, 2 weeks ago to Britt Baker. It just didn't make any sense. Some people will say, well, mostly AEW doesn't make sense. And to a degree, they're kind of right. But overall, AEW's done much better with that. The Jeff Jarrett Hangman Page, which if you follow us on TikTok, I talked about Tom Campbell's song about booking Jarrett and Hangman for Wembley. You still got a week for that, and I think you should do it. I think there's enough there that you can create intrigue for a fun match between those two. Will Ospreay and MJF, Overall, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the feud, but that again goes back to what I talked about on a couple episodes back about the rechristening of the international title to the American title and MJF doing this American yah rah rah type of gimmick. It just hasn't hit with me. Doesn't mean he's doing bad. It's just not something I'm really intrigued or entertained fully by. However, if you haven't seen it yet, I'm about to show you some awesome work by MJF when he was at Rev Pro about a week or so ago, defending that American Championship currently. This is MJF cutting a promo and using lyrics from Hulk Hogan's Real American Entrance theme. Check this out.
I am a real American. I fight for the rights of every man.
Oh, come on again. Okay, this guy's ridiculous.
I am a real American. I fight for what's right.
Is that not just golden? Like, every bit of that is just so entertaining. No matter what gimmick MJF is rocking, he can rock it to its fullest extent. And again, while it may not be resonating with me, I think he's doing a fabulous job with what he's trying to accomplish. So props to MJF. I love the whole Real American shtick that just happened at Rev Pro in that video you saw. And I do think Ospreay and MJF is still going to be a fantastic match. So AEW's got a lot going for it. There is reportedly some concerns, but we'll talk about that more once we get towards the latter part of our show. Let's talk about some backstage news. Like I was saying, there hasn't really been too much drama to speak of backstage that doesn't really concern contract things. The MJF Britt Baker situation has been addressed by both as being something that was taken way out of proportion and over exaggerated, but it's the wrestling world and pro wrestling nonetheless. So really, what else is new? But the contractual status of several stars on both fronts, WWE and AEW, has made for some very interesting things that could be taking place in the very near future. Right now, Daniel Garcia is reportedly in limbo as to exactly what he wants to do now that his AEW contract is coming up here rather quickly. There are some that feel like he's going to make the jump to WWE. Others feel like he should stay in AEW. And a part of me kind of feels like he would fit still with AEW. I know he's kind of gotten this whole dance thing over in AEW, which he did organically on his own. And I kind of feel like that would be great for AEW to hold on to because he's a gimmick, he's a good wrestler. I really do think that they should do their best to keep him as much as possible. But him being a great wrestler and now starting to find this entertaining character that he is starting to put the pieces of the puzzle together on. It didn't fully come together when he was with the Jericho Appreciation Society, but he's now starting to really come into his own, and maybe WWE is his next stop. A lot of people feel like that's where Ricky Starks is heading, and I am for one of those that believes he will and should. I think Starks would fit better over in WWE than he would in AEW, so I think it's only a matter of time before we see him there. The other big contractual news with AEW, the Lucha Brothers. There has been so much that's come out about this, and there's a lot of questions that have yet to be answered. Tony Khan was on a radio show earlier this week and is still claiming that WWE is contract tampering. And I think to a degree he doesn't quite understand what contract tampering means, but I'm not going to hold that against the man. I think he's a little bit more paranoid than what he should. He's got a great roster. He's doing good with his show. So I would say just stop worrying about the little things because, yeah, they are little things. Guys are going to come, guys are going to go. It's not that big of a deal. You can work with the massive roster that you have and put together a compelling show and build on characters and some of the ones that you maybe have neglected. Maybe start focusing on some of those AEW original talents. There's a lot that you can play with, and I wouldn't concern myself with too much when it comes to losing talent because you've got plenty to make up with it. Lucha Bros, however, looks like they could be in a situation where time could be tacked onto their contracts due to injuries, similar to what WWE has done when they've frozen wrestlers' contracts due to injury. AEW can do the same thing. Although I don't think Tony Khan is like a Vince McMahon where they have done that in the past and he's just doing it out of spite. He doesn't seem like that kind of person, but maybe this is a situation where he does play that spiteful card. Maybe we do see TKM, Tony Khan McMahon, come out. Who knows? I don't think so, but that's always the possibility. The rumors going around is that they are potentially going to do that to Rey Fenix. There had been news that Penta had already signed with WWE, but he was trying to make a package deal for him and Rey Fenix so that they would come over together. There's a lot of questions, and even as so far as Penta putting something out earlier this week calling fake news towards him signing a contract and being in Orlando this past week, he tweeted out that that's fake news. AEW is my present, I believe is how he put that. We can throw the tweet up there right now. But people question, well, what's your future? And I mean, I think the future has already written itself. You haven't seen them much on AEW TV lately. There apparently has been some bitter feelings between both the Lucha Bros and with Tony Khan. So who's to say? I don't know. We have no idea. And that's sometimes I think that's lost on wrestling fans, is that we don't know. We are just fans. So we can speculate. I'm sure that there's people that do great reporting out there. But I think until we see something really come to fruition, we really should take a lot of news at just face value for the time being. But speaking of face value, Lashley has a great face to market for any wrestling company or potentially MMA company, because as of this weekend, Lashley is a full free agent. There is no non-compete clause. MVP has become a free agent as well. And this week, it looks like he and Lashley may potentially be coming up with their next move, as MVP has trademarked under his company, Totally Harmless Concepts LLC, the term Hurt Syndicate. So is that what they might be going by when they debut elsewhere? We talked about it last week, and we'll talk again. AEW has shown interest in them. He's had interest from the professional fight world, such as Bellator. I know with TKO being the group that merged WWE and UFC under the same umbrella, who's to say that he hasn't made a contact with UFC and that UFC hasn't reached out to him? He's had Japan promotions reach out to him. I personally still believe TNA would be a great suit for them. I know it seems like because they're, quote, a smaller scale, it would be a downgrade, but both men, both Lashley and MVP, had great success during their TNA runs when it was even still Impact Wrestling. So I think that would be the better fit. And like I said, you could bring Shelton Benjamin with you. You could do this Hurt Syndicate, maybe even add a member or two, or just keep it as a threesome. It doesn't matter. You have so many options that you could do. And I just think that they would have much more airtime and be treated much better as top stars than they would really with AEW, because AEW is shown in the past. You sign a big name, and then a few weeks later, you end up on Rampage, or maybe now Collision, which I know they've still been trying to get Collision, even though they've had a great success with Collision at their residency stay in Arlington. They've profited apparently very well, according to WrestleNomics. I just don't think that they would be a focus for AEW. So I think TNA is still the route to go, but really, we don't know what they're going to do next. We certainly don't know what Lashley's up to. We already know MVP has shown interest in competing against Josh Barnett at a Bloodsport event. Lashley's next move, though, all eyes are on him, wondering what he's going to do next. And man, this just gives me old Monday Night War nostalgia feelings, where it's like, oh man, contract goes up with one company, or a star quits, leaves, whatever. Who are they going to show up with next? Is someone going to ECW, WCW, WWE? It's just such a fun time again. I am so glad that we're in a wrestling renaissance, and everything just has been on fire for every company. I've enjoyed so much being a fan again. I look forward to wrestling every single week just as much as I did when I was a kid, and it's amazing to have that feeling. Let's talk a little bit about some booking decisions, though, because I've seen two big things come out of this week. One of them is questioning Rhea Ripley's booking as well as Cody Rhodes' title reign. So let's start with Cody's title reign. He won the title at WrestleMania, and I've seen people say that it's almost like this is the post-Chase blues when it comes to his title reign, as it seems to be the case with almost any big-time babyface. Once they get the title, the whole question of what's next arises, and then sometimes they don't have a clear-cut answer, or in Cody's case, he gets thrown into matches that people are criticizing as being more about respect and trying to earn the respect as being a good worker. People felt that way with AJ Styles, Logan Paul. Now they feel that way with Kevin Owens. And it definitely wasn't like that with Solo Sikoa, which you could argue has been the closest to being any kind of, I won't even call it a blood feud, even though the bloodline would be there, so it kind of makes sense. But overall, I wouldn't say it was a harsh feud. But I understand people's trepidation. Because if we're being honest, yeah, there's a little bit that feels like is lacking for whatever reason in Cody's title reign. But I don't think it's a bad title reign. He had a good match with AJ Styles at Backlash in France, followed that up with a great matchup with Logan Paul down in Saudi Arabia. Then we got Styles Rhodes 2 in the I Quit match, which was a great I Quit match, minus the ending. Still don't like that steel step spot where he quit right then and there. And then Cody still hit him. I really wish they would have just let him hit him with the steps, after which AJ could have said, I quit after that or something. But that's the only gripe I've had about that match is the ending. I thought it just could have been much better than what we got. Going into the Logan Paul match we already talked about, he had a great match with. Then you get to Solo Sikoa and the Bloodline. And while that feels like it was more rushed than anything, it still was good. Like I said on my review of SummerSlam, Solo showed that he could play. He was a major player, and I think he's going to continue to show that because he stood right there and went toe-to-toe with Cody in a very believable matchup. Now we come to Kevin Owens, where, once again, most people are going to criticize this as saying that this feels more like another respect type of feud. And I can see where people are coming from, especially when Rhodes told Owens just last week he wanted to give him this title shot because he was his friend and he felt like he earned it because he'd been there for him through any kind of harsh step in his, I guess, journey, you will, to the WWE Championship. Owens was a friend of his that stood by his side and helped him in any way he could. And there's an actual personal relationship of friendship between the two that dates back to Cody originally leaving WWE. So this was, in turn, his gift to Kevin, to which Owens was like, I really don't think I deserve it. Now you fast forward to this week and you saw their little interaction where Cody made the save this past Friday night on SmackDown from Austin Theory and from Grayson Waller. But I saw something in Kevin Owens that makes me think that this feud is not going to be a one and done. As a matter of fact, I have a big feeling that this might be the feud where people will finally be like, oh, look, there's more than just respect on the line. Don't be surprised if Kevin Owens shows his old prize fighter heel character come out fully. I know he's been kind of the prize fighter over the last year or so, but that's been babyface Kevin Owens. Prize fighter Kevin Owens was a legit heel in NXT that made a huge impact on the main roster when he beat John Cena clean as a preacher sheets. And yeah, that I think is the direction we're heading. That's the Kevin Owens I think we are just a few moments away from seeing. And if that happens, I think you're going to get that personal feud that's been lacking in Cody's title reign to this point. So be aware. I think that's what's coming up next. That's just my prediction. Another note, though, for another superstar's booking is Rhea Ripley. As we talked earlier, Rhea Ripley's booking has been called into question as people are wondering how is she the face in this feud between Liv Morgan and Dominic when she was the one who was basically the dominatrix to Dominic. And then she's the one that took Liv Morgan out originally with the shoulder injury. Well, the thing is they are booking Rhea based off of crowd reaction. They are booking her because she gets cheered. That's why she's the face. You really can't do that booking style that people have come to just accept. When it comes to professional wrestling, storytelling should be the main focal point and aspect. And the only way you can tell good stories is by having a protagonist and an antagonist. No matter what anybody wants to say, those are two big ingredients that you need to have a compelling story. Now with Rhea and this whole love triangle, I understand. Rhea was the heel when this originally started. She took out Liv. You could honestly say maybe she was using Dominic at one point. All of that makes great logical sense. But when Liv Morgan came back and started this whole revenge tour, yes, it started out with her being the face. Then when Rhea got hurt, it was just one of those things where she had built up so much I'll get it right. She built up so much momentum and fan appreciation that there was no way she was going to get booed in this feud. If anything, Liv was going to be the one to suffer and get booed. So the face would have been booed, while once again the heel is getting cheered. And you can't do that. So Rhea Ripley was in that situation similar to what Stone Cold Steve Austin was in, where it's like, hey, they're cheering this bad guy, but we can't let that happen. So we either have one of two options. You either continue to force it down the wrestling audience's throat, which they're not going to accept, or you can pivot and go with them and find a way to make it make sense. They did that. They found a way to make it make sense because Liv Morgan didn't just straight up beat Rhea Ripley. She had to injure Rhea first, which took the title off of her. And then you can say she earned the title without really beating a rightful champion. Even though Becky Lynch won the Battle Royal to become the world champion, still it was Rhea who was legitimately the champion in a lot of people's eyes because she never lost the title. So when then you have Liv that's bragging about being a champion and then start bragging about how she took Rhea Ripley out, there's where the heel side comes in, because if you got your revenge, you don't need to brag about it all the time. And then you certainly don't need to continue to try to take things away from the person that you've arguably already taken away the biggest thing away from them, which has been time of their career. So yeah, it's a combination of taking your babyface character and turning them into an egocentric a-hole, essentially, and then taking your quote heel and getting cheered by the audience, flipping it on them and giving it exactly what they needed, which is a reason to keep cheering her. Now they have it. Now she is a face. Now it makes sense. That's why she's the face in this feud. It doesn't matter what happened prior to Rhea's injury. All that matters is what they've done after Rhea's injury. It's all made sense. She being Liv Morgan was the worst kind of babyface, which is what turned her heel, which is being a braggadocious babyface about taking out opponents and injuring them, while Rhea was sympathetic because, oh, she never lost her title. This person was showing ruthlessness and now has no kind of conscience towards what they did to her. So it all makes sense regardless of what people would like to think. Last bit of information was the announcement from AEW about the All In pay-per-view coming to Texas. The Dallas Globe Life Field in Arlington, technically, will play host to All In Texas next year. And it, I guess, is going to be something big to look forward to if the roster doesn't have its concerns met at this point. There's been a report surfacing that the AEW roster is getting really concerned about the declining attendance as well as the TV numbers dwindling down. I don't know if that's anything they need to worry about. I think once things get even keeled and they find either a deal with WBD or potentially somewhere else, because as we talked about on the TikTok channel last week, the window of exclusivity for WBD is now closed and AEW can now potentially search for another home for their wrestling product. Maybe that happens. Maybe it doesn't. But I don't think All In Texas is going to be a failure. It's a 40,000 seat capacity type of arena or stadium, if you will. So I do think they're going to have some success there. It's just to the amount of what success you're going to see. It's going to be the first pay-per-view from Texas ever for AEW, so that's already going for it. The stadium of Globe Life is a big stadium that can be filled, and AEW is doing much better with their product and storytelling. So if they can just tighten the screws up a little bit, hopefully get that TV deal here soon that they've been waiting on, and Tony Khan's been promising is going to be announced imminently, I think things will be just fine for AEW. But guys, that's all I got for you this week. It's been a great time. What do you guys think of everything that's gone down? Do you think AEW All In Texas will sell out? Do you think Rhea's booking has been bad? How do you feel about Cody's booking? Sound off in those comments down below, and let's chat about anything you want in the wrestling world. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, as we've talked about before, and hit that bell notification so that you're notified anytime there is a new video uploaded to the channel. Make sure you're following us on all of our social sites as well. As you can see, there is a picture on our screen that shows where you can follow us. And we have a lot of things in the works here. I am potentially looking at merchandise for Tights and Turnbuckles. Interviews are starting to get lined up for the channel. And I'm also working on another project that I think is going to make that nostalgia itch get satisfied. So tune in. I promise there's a lot more still to come. I appreciate every single one of you that have tuned in, whether it's been each and every week or you're new to the channel. Thank you so much for your time. I'll be back again next week to talk more pro wrestling. But until that time, you guys take care, have a great rest of your week, and continue to love pro wrestling.